This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins and her guest. So, Elise, I know we were supposed to do this a couple days ago. I had no voice. I barely have a voice today. So, I'm going to turn it over to you and tell us what we're going to be talking about.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen. And I hope that you get well soon. Lots of tips and tricks. And I'm the author of Super Ager, and this is How to Super Age. So we're going to be talking to Elizabeth Magallon-Fleury. She's a serial entrepreneur and a Life's Encore Planning, or Life's Encore Planning is her fourth business. She's married to a very supportive husband, Steve, and they have one son, Aiden. He just turned 20, and they have recently relocated to Reno, Nevada. She's an animal lover, and her first business is Pawsitively Purrfect, a pet sitting service in San Jose, California. She launched Life's Encore Planning in January 2019 after supporting and caring for family and friends who are struggling to care for aging loved ones. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elise. Thank you. Hi, Karen. Thank you for
Hi.
having me on today.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk about this topic because it's got so many layers to it. And I think it's going to become more and more important in coming decades. Many of us, like Elizabeth, we have kids that are, my son is 22, your son is similar in age, and they call us the sandwich generation because even though our kids maybe aren't fully dependent, and there is some people with aging parents and younger kids at home, we're called the sandwich generation. And there's also something, I love the way I had a British professor when I was studying gerontology, and I always have to say this, but he said sandwich carers. I love that, sandwich carers, because I always just think I'm making sandwiches for everybody or something.
With care and love.
Yes. So tell us about what you do, a little more details, and if you have anything to say about the sandwich carers, that would be great.
Okay, well, I am definitely a sandwich carer because my journey actually, this latest one that launched me to Life's Encore Planning started in 2014. And at that point, my parents had come to live with us because of medical issues. We had our son at that point was in junior high, and I'm working full time. So is my husband. I'm helping to care for my parents and raise a child at the same time. So that is the perfect definition and explanation of being part of the sandwich generation for sure. Going through all of that and understanding how difficult it is and the support that people need through all of that, and how it just kind of takes over your life. And, especially when you still have kids that you're trying to raise, and how difficult that is. I'm like, I really want to help people through this process because I've done it. I know how difficult it can be. And I wanted to prepare people as much as possible so they don't have to, a devastation happens. Like with my mom, it was a medical emergency, and then everything it's going crazy and you don't know what to do. But if you have certain things in place ahead of time, it makes it so much easier when something like a medical crisis or a death or a disability comes into your life for everyone to handle.
Wow, thank you for all that. There was so much. And just from what you said, I'm wondering, in your opinion, with your own journey and with your clients, what is the most challenging thing, especially for sandwich generation? Is it like emotional? I mean, psychological is similar, psychological or time, because that just sounds so stressful. It is stressful when you have, especially in an emergency. And I know we're going to talk a lot about this in the next 40 minutes or so that we're on together. Where do you begin? Like, did you feel crunched for time? Do your clients feel crunched for time? Because I know I felt crunched for time as an entrepreneur caring for older adults, and I just don't have time to do all the details. So tell us, or is it psychological? Is it that all emotional? I feel the emotional, I don't want to say burden, because we love our families, but there is a lot of emotion.
So from, talking with people and going through it and, some market research that I've done, the main things are people don't know what they don't know. They're overwhelmed and they're just like, yeah, I'm not ready. It'll be fine. I have plenty of time. And even with the fact that my business, Life's Encore Planning, deals mostly with aging adults, this is something that we really should, as a society, talk about from the beginning. The minute our children become adults, we can't just easily step in and take care of them. So really, ultimately, it would start the minute they become adults and treat them, through their whole lives with this. I think one of the things where I start with my clients is having the conversation. There's so many other, there's the emotional, there's the physical, there's all of that. But I really think in starting with the conversation with the family, you can kind of air out, okay, so where are mom and dad at? Where are they feeling? Where are we feeling as children? Are we in the, I'm not going to be able to take care of them, or I'll do whatever I can for you, or, oh, mom and dad, you have plenty of time. And then mom and dad could be in that same vein of feeling those same feelings. So it's really kind of fleshing out where everybody's at. And then once we have that conversation that, I help kind of facilitate with my clients, then we can kind of see, once we understand the personality of the family, then we can move forward with, okay, what do you have in place? What do you not have in place? And then how we move forward based on all the emotions that everyone is feeling.
Yeah, that was, again, a lot. And I'm hearing feelings and needs. There's going to be clear needs that you seem to know a lot about. I mean, I know you know a lot about, but things that even I don't know about as a gerontologist. And there's the psychological, the emotional. Plus, on top of it, our society, or at least in the USA, we don't talk about these things. We just kind of pretend they're going to get taken care of. And on top of that, I just been doing some research myself for some writing I was doing, and our government doesn't pay for it. And not that all governments do, but one country I did find, Norway, it's like a regional thing. And let's say, like, I think they have different words, and obviously they're Norwegian words, and then we're translating them. But the local government, you just talk to them if you need help and you need caregiving. So it's like, that's a nice pie in the sky idea. And I was like, maybe I should move to Norway.
Yes.
But let's just start with, that's my alarm. Let's just start with, how do you parse out the feelings versus the needs, if that even makes sense? And gosh, I mean, you got your job cut out for you, because there's so many feelings that come up, and then there's so many needs, and they're all things that we're just like, I'll deal with it later, as you said. Anything you've got on that?
Yes. Well, so usually when my clients come to me, it's either going to be a need, oh my gosh, I'm in the throes of something and I need help, or it's coming from the feeling part of it. You know, I've been watching mom and dad and I'm getting a little nervous, or, you know, they're 3 states away and I don't know, you know, how I could support them. Do I need to move them to me, or do I need to move to them? So it's very much figuring out what that specific client needs at that specific time. And then we move forward from there, whether it's the needs base immediately, or whether it's an emotional thing. Excuse me for just 1 minute.
No problem. We're all living our lives. We're all.
I'm so sorry for that.
No worries.
okay.
I think for listening, if you're listening to the podcast, I think we had a pet, maybe.
Yes, yes. Priscilla
a pet
the cat
was doing
wanting
something.
to come in and be on part of the podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so just in case you're listening, that pause was a pet, pet pause.
A pet pause.
A pun. Yeah. So that's really interesting and so telling with what we all go through in aging. I think another thing that I've noticed is that, again, different generations, well, when we're older, we know what it feels like. I mean, older is a moving target. Let's say that. But, you know, for my parents, I can say, they're like, everything's fine. We're going well. And then maybe my brother will be, hopefully they're not going to listen to this, but they'll say, my brother will be like, I'm worried about dad. He's driving all over the place and I don't know if he can drive. And you're negotiating these things where perceptions are just all over the place. And yeah, the dynamics of families are already challenging. Some are less functional than others. Let's just say that. So what do you find with, you know, even talking between siblings? Let's start there. Do you have any issues with siblings? Because siblings can have wildly different perceptions about themselves, about the aging parents. Any stories or advice?
Well, so a lot of times, especially if it's the adult child coming to me saying, okay, I'm worried about mom and dad, then that's my first question. All right, do you have siblings? And if so, I want the 2 of you to talk first, because I want to understand, because that's a really telling thing on the dynamics that we're going to be dealing with as we move forward. So, you know, sometimes they, you know, work well together. Sometimes they'll break off. And like, for example, my brother and I, with dealing with my parents, he lives in the same state with them. So he's more the one-on-one hands-on kind of items. But since I live 2 states away, I deal with like all of their finances, because that's how I can help out and support. But we always keep in communication with each other as well. So that's where I always start it. I just got a client and the brother and sister talked first. Then we got mom and dad involved. Then I facilitated the conversation between the family. And I felt really good about it because everybody did well. And, you know, I understood some personalities a little bit ahead of time. So that always helps, you know, going in and understanding the dynamics. I have another friend who's unfortunately dealing with her mom got COVID and it's not going well. And, you know, it's probably just time. And the one daughter is ready and the other daughter is not. And so
when you say ready, do you mean like
ready to let her go? Mom is sick and she's not improving and she's in her mid 80s and the doctors are like, okay, you know, she's just, we do not foresee her getting better. And so mom's wishes and one daughter's wishes are, okay, let's just let the natural process take its course. And the one daughter is like, no, we got to do everything. We got to save mom and all that. Now, this is why it's so imperative for all of us as individuals to have documented what we want and what our choices are. Because we don't want to leave it to our children who may or may not agree. And it may have nothing to do with what we truly want for ourselves.
You know, Elizabeth, I totally agree with you, because my parents about 30 years ago, probably a little longer than that, they made me the person who was in charge of their living will, because they knew that my brothers would never be able to tell the doctor it's time to go.
Yes.
My one brother was put in charge of all their financials, and it really worked out perfectly for all of us. My other brother just chose to be there and be the cheerleader for all of us. But we all knew what my parents wanted. And that was extremely important, especially after my father passed away. We knew that my mother was still capable of living on her own. And so we sat her down and we said, as long as you're okay, you are safe, and your doctors admit that you're safe, you can live alone. The day your doctors question it, then we will all get together and we'll make some other choices. And we all lived in other states. So I understand we're very lucky. We all got along. But I know when my grandfather came to live with us when I was a young child, they just threw it on my parents. They just said, my mother was the youngest. She had young kids at home. This would be a great place for him to live out his days. And none of us had a choice. And I loved my grandfather to death, but you know what? It really was a disruption for all of us.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And two, when you are planning for these ahead of time and talk about it, it's actually a gift. It's a gift for yourself and a gift for your children, or those, or your spouse or your friend, whoever is that your person who's going to make those decisions for you. Because it's so hard when we are already trying to support and care and do the best. That's all we want to do, is the best for our loved one. But if we don't know and they haven't told us, then we're trying to figure it out. And then we're questioning ourselves. And then there can be a certain amount of guilt that can come into it. So the best that we really can do for our loved ones is to plan ahead and have these talks and conversations, because it's going to happen to all of us. So we might as well just get it out there, be open with it, and just, for all of us.
I love that you said it's a gift. That's such a beautiful way of putting it. And it's so much about super aging that, I'd say planning for, what do you call it? Life's encore. Planning
Yes.
for there's a lot of planning involved, and maybe we'll get into some of the details. I did want to say one thing about, you were saying that the client whose mother had COVID, I believe.
Yes.
I heard a quote over the weekend that reminded me of what you were talking about, which is, let me see, I may be slandering this, but it was something like, if we gave our relatives, if we gave our loved ones the choice of when we would go, we would never go. And it was in relation to somebody who had passed. It was a kind of a luminary figure. And I was like, what a great quote. And it was actually something he said, and he had just died. That we wouldn't let people go. So it's just so interesting, because we do want to cling. And we, if we really think of that, we would say, no, you'll go next week. And then and it's funny, because then we think of that eternal life, we'd be here forever, which actually maybe we don't. So just something to think about. And I also got something out of what you said unexpectedly about the sibling, I'm going to call it the sibling solidarity, because I've been thinking about some conversations I need to have with my parents. And it hadn't occurred to me, because I'm living with my parents. those of you listening, if you're new, if you don't know, I live with my parents age 91 and 92. And that can almost get, we're talking about the newspaper, the news, or what's happening today, or the trash needs to be taken out. And sometimes we avoid the other conversations that we know we're all getting older, and something could happen to me, something could happen to any one of us, and how we are going to plan for that. But I hadn't thought of I talked to my brother, but I hadn't thought of I could have some solidarity with him, and that would feel supportive, because nobody else besides your siblings, if you get along with them, are really going to intimately know the parents in the situation. So I'm going to use that tip. So that's a great tip. Talk to your siblings if they're open, because, and then you don't have it all on your shoulders, especially if you are more closer. I'm closer. My brother is in Southern California. I'm in Northern California, and that's about 6 hours away. I'm just saying that for anyone listening, because wherever you're listening in the world, sometimes people think California is small, but it's a big state. It's bigger than a lot of countries.
Yes.
Yeah. So any other tips about talking about it? Is it one conversation or more than one conversation? And
no, what I try to tell my clients is it doesn't have to be this one big, huge conversation, right? We can break it down into a lot of mini conversations, because it's overwhelming for the best of us. Nevertheless, if we're talking with someone who might be older, who's worried about these things, there's just so much going on there. So like I said, it's good if you have someone, whether it's the siblings talking, or like in a case, one of my clients, an aunt had gone through this with a husband and her mother. So she had some really good insight. So we brought her into the conversation when we all got together. And, sometimes you do have to have the big ones because logistically, but we try not to do that. And depending on the, where the adult that we're talking about is coming from, right? If they're like resistant, oh, no, we don't need to have this conversation, then we want to try to have more mini conversations in more casual settings, right? It's not like, okay, we're going to get together at 2:00 today and we're going to sit down and we're going to cover this and that and this and that. No, it could be, hey, we're out puttering around in the garden and you happen to bring up something, maybe we, for next season, instead of you being down on your hands and knees in the garden, how about we build some raised garden beds? Because I know how much you love gardening, and we wouldn't want you to lose that wonderful thing that you do. So let's do some raised garden beds and make it easier for you. Simple things like that can make a huge difference. And then you can slowly move along down the process. And then there's the other personalities who are like, all right, what are we talking about? Let's just get together and just get it over with. Right?
I love that. I love that. Know your family members, especially the aging family members' personalities and their styles. That is golden. And I also love your story about the garden beds, because it's magical. And some of the things are not as fun to talk about. Like, do you want to be cremated or buried? What do you want us to say? How would we write your memorial? Those are a little more challenging. I love your tip too. I'm going to use it with my dad, because he's more, the older white guy that doesn't want to talk about anything, and emotions are he's like, you're getting emotional. That's what he says to me. I'm like, yeah, I have emotions,
You do too, by the way.
So I love the little idea of mini conversation. It reminds me of when we're parents, we're always taught to if you're a driving parent, you have those conversations, difficult conversations while you're driving, because you actually don't have to look at the person. So it's almost like we could be looking at the plants. My dad doesn't garden, but we could be doing something else. And then we talk, and it's not as awkward, especially for somebody, different generations have different styles and different people. There's so many variables. So I love that tip where we could have a mini conversation. That is brilliant. I want to go to homes, because that's another thing. Homes, whether you live in an apartment, a big house, a small house. One of the things, there's so many things in the home that can be with falling. Okay, I'll just say, as a gerontologist, falling is like, I think it's the number one way we, can lose our independence. We'll just put it there. And preventing falls it's very hard, but we also want to make our homes safe, and we want to be safe in the homes. And it's a much more complicated subject. I'm just saying a little bit, and I'd love to hear how you discuss that with people, because I think you were telling me that some people, and my parents are kind of like this, but I'm going to die in this home, or this is my home. And we want to honor that, but how do we negotiate that if it's just starting to get, tell us about that. Cause we could be talking for a couple hours here. We need the Reader's Digest version.
Yes. So, yes, I'm going to die in this home and you can't do anything about it. Absolutely. Okay. So, what I like to do is there again, find out, which way are they leaning? I'm going to move, I'm going to stay, which way. There's also I'm going to move away from you, or I'm going to move to you. So there's lots of variables there. But when it comes to living in your own home and aging in place, what I tell people is that's great. It might be doable, but it's something that we need to plan for depending on your situation, right? I mean, if you're living in a single level home, right there, things are so much easier. So it kind of just depends on their situation. But what I do tell them is it's not just about putting grab bars in the showers either. There's so many more things to do. And what I have found is you kind of go through an assessment in the home, room to room, looking at possible hazards, watching people and how they are in the kitchen. What's their laundry situation? I don't know, but when I'm 90, I'm not sure if I want to walk down into a basement to do my laundry. Right?
Yeah.
So it's things like this, just everyday tasks that we can watch what our loved ones are doing and seeing what they might be struggling with, and then understand the options. One of the things that is big that people don't understand when they talk about, I'm aging in place, as long as I'm living in my home, I'm independent and everything is great. Okay, well, you might be living on your own, but can you get out and about and do the things that you want to do? Or do you have to wait for someone like a family member to come take you somewhere? And you kind of feel guilty about doing that. So you really don't ask them until you absolutely need some help, right? So yes, you're living on your own, but are you really independent? Not so much. Where on the flip side, if you went and lived in a retirement community, you don't have to worry about it. You have your own apartment, but if you want to go out, you have access to people taking you places, right? To your doctor's appointments, out to the grocery store, out for recreational type of things, social things. That's the other thing with living on your own. Do you have people around in a community in your neighborhood where you still have the option to go outside and meet a neighbor or have a neighbor come over? Or are you now in a place where, because you don't have your car and you don't have that mobility, that now you've lost the social aspect of your life? So there again, great, you're living on your own and you're independent, but you've lost a part of who you are and what makes life worth living. So these are the two sides of the coin, where when someone comes to me and says, oh, I'm living here, I'm not moving. Okay, well, let's look at it. Let's see how we can make this the best for you. And when they're in that assessment, if there are some things that could be really major that need to change, then that's a good segue to say, well, why don't we go just check out a retirement community or something like that. And one of the other things is there's also intergenerational with, okay, does one of your family members, are they willing to come and live with you? So you have someone else, or even just getting a roommate is a big thing these days to help people, because they want to stay in their homes. They want to stay in their community. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. That was so much to unpack. And I'm also, the environment around, like if you're in a suburb or a city, and the number of stairs, or do you have an elevator? Because some of those things are, like you said, the grab bars, that's a lot of times that could be actually paid for by the government. It's complicated. I'm sure you know about that, but I want to bore our readers with, our listeners. But I'm also thinking of, my parents want to age in place. My son's grandmother wants to age in place. And she lives in Queens in New York. And there's one of the services that they offer in New York. It's called Access-a-Ride. And if you have difficulty, because the subways, not everyone can walk those subways, there's so many stairs. And they have like a taxi service, and you call them and they give you rides everywhere, which is great, but not everywhere has that,
Yes.
And there's so many things to think about. And I love the way you put it, like, what is going to be the best place, and getting the person to at least consider these things. And then if they make the decision, they do want to stay in the home, maybe they just know what's going to happen if something that they do fall, or they can't move, or because we all wish for the best, which is we age, we don't have like a downhill. We just go down quickly. Now for those of you listening, think about it. You want to live well, the longest life possible. And then just things, it's not a slow decline, in other words. So, that's a whole other subject, but often it is a slow decline, and those stairs in the home, you could be having, say, macular degeneration. You can't see as well. So many different things can happen. I want to get us back. So I think we're going to have you back on, because you've got so much great information, and there's any one of these questions I think we could spend almost the entire time on. So what about stuff? Because I would say, I always call my mom, again, I always think I know one of my cousins listens. So Brenda, if you're out there, she'll be laughing, because we say we're Bertillions. That's my mom's maiden name. Well, we're hoarders. I say luxury hoarders because on the outside we could look like, oh, everything's fabulous. And then like, don't open that closet. But I think you get the idea. Some people like to collect stuff. And what do we do with that stuff? Is it better? That's overwhelming to me, because I see that with my parents. Like, that's actually one of the most overwhelming things. My dad likes to get rid of stuff. My mom likes to keep it. And we have a lot of stuff.
So yes, the stuff. And what are we going to do with this stuff? So starting early in the process helps. And it, and like you said, your dad's like, get rid of it. Mom's like, no. So I say that the task, you need to take it one step at a time. And depending on their level of willingness to let go, either you can start in a big room, or maybe we'll just start with a kitchen drawer, right? Understanding them. And one of the other things too, and it's hard for us, I was just reading about this the other day, is we're all going to understand it as we get older. But a lot of times these people are holding on to this stuff, not really, just because they want all this, but it's their lives, right? They look at this item and you don't see anything, but they take one look at that item and they remember the day they got it, who they were with, what time it was, what it was like outside, why they received that. And that's part of who they are. So letting that go is really difficult. It's not just physical, it's way more emotional. So if we do it, like I said, understanding where they're coming from for how much we can tackle at a time, and also giving them time to look through it. Like sometimes we're just like, okay, drawer, whoa, we're going to throw everything out here, blah, blah, blah. No. And then they're like, no. And if you rush them through it on that one, then they're going to be even more resistant to go on to the next drawer. So maybe if we spend a little bit more time in the beginning, going slower through the process and getting them into it and used to it and feeling okay about it, it may actually in the long run make the process easier as you go. And one of the things that I tell my clients too is, you want to give this to me, we'll say, or who you want to give it to. And right now you just have it packed up somewhere to give it to them someday. Why don't you give it to them right now? You can see the joy in their face when they receive the item. And maybe next time you go over their home, you'll see them either using it or displaying it. So, that's another thing as well. I don't think that we necessarily need to wait until you're gone to pass something along.
I love that. And also sometimes we can forget, what if there is something that your loved one wants to pass on, and then they do pass on and you're like, I can't remember who they wanted to give this to, unless you write it or something. I don't remember that stuff. And I'm thinking of something that my grandma had in a little shelf. And I'm so glad. I think right after she passed, I wrote down what all the things were, and I completely forgot about it. It was like something I was intrigued with because I had these little tiny things. When you're a kid, you love to look at little stuff.
Yeah.
And I had stories about it all. But if I thought about it now, I'd be like, I don't even remember that shelf barely. But when I looked at it, it's like it brought me back to childhood. And so we do need to write a lot of things down. And I love your tip for going slow in the beginning, because I think as if we're, it could be an aunt or not necessarily our parents. We'll just say the older person, there's going to be trust involved. So what I heard was build that trust. Because if we're going in there like, let's get this done, and we're harried, and we may be harried, we may be frustrated and not want to spend a lot of time, but how that's going to pay off because it builds the trust. And then I also think that will help them prioritize, because that's a hard thing. Like, what are the important things you want to give away or keep? And I would rather know about it now rather than go, oh my God, I'm just get that dump truck right now. And there might be, or the, what do you call those things? The bin that you put in front of the house, I can't remember.
Yeah. Dumpster. Yeah.
Dumpster. Yes.
Just roll. Like my mom says, oh yeah, your brother, the minute we're gone, he's just going to roll that dumpster up and just start throwing everything in it. So yeah. It's trust, and it's honoring their life and their memories. And, and most of the time, it's not some big expensive thing. It's like you said, the things on the shelf at your grandmother's when you were a kid, right? Or something that was always on the dining room table when families got together.
Right.
It's those simple things that when you look at them or when you use them later on down the line, it reminds you of them. So yes, but we have to take the time and show the respect and gain the trust. I love that you said gain the trust of your loved one, that, you know, you're going to deal with this and you're going to give them a certain amount of time, because we do have that little caveat as well.
I love
I
it.
see.
You know,
Yeah.
I remember when my mother had to break down her apartment when she was going to independent living. My brothers and I were there, and she had me go through her closet with her. Now, my mother was 4'10". I'm 5'5". Okay, big difference. And she would take out pants and she'd say, "Here, you can have these." And I'd look at her, and I'd say, "They're not going to fit." She'd say, "Oh, of course they will. They fit me." Okay. And so a couple of times I would put them on and I'd say, "Mom, do you want me to wear these?" "Oh, maybe you shouldn't keep them." And so I went along with her, and it wasn't that she had dementia or anything, but in her mind, I was her younger daughter. I should be able to take some of her clothes. And when she could see it on me and it became, a comedy, we could laugh about it. But then she also realized she didn't need 2 closets full of clothes to take to independent living. And so we just we made it a game in some ways, because it was difficult for me to see her give up 2 closets worth of clothes. And yet when she did die and I had to go through her closet, I only found over 100 pair of black pants with tags on them, because every time she went shopping, she needed black pants. So
That's awesome.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you made a game out of it. That is wonderful.
absolutely.
I just have one more question, because I know we're going to need to wrap up, but I think we may have you on again. What if the parent is, or parents, some parents, well, let me back up a little bit, because I just did write a chapter on aging for a social work textbook. And there's a lot of differences. Like, some people have, especially boomers, and boomers and above, they might have benefited from the boom in the economy, and they may have plenty of wealth, and they can take care of, they could even hire a caregiver, some, not all, but even the middle income, but low income seniors. Sometimes we do have relatives that are low income older adults, and they're more financially dependent, which is wrought with other difficulties, that sometimes the ones that have, my mom had a career, my dad had a career, they feel financially fine, and that makes them sometimes more towards the stubborn, but also the ones that are more dependent on us financially and otherwise can be stubborn too. Or, I mean, stubborn, not, yeah, I don't want to be ageist, but you get the idea. They can want what they want. But that is something to think about. And some of our listeners may have parents that are fine, they got their retirement or they got that. But what about those that have parents that are more needy financially? How do you deal with that? That's another complicated thing.
Yes, it is. It's very complicated, especially in the United States and our Medicare system and our whole healthcare system. So in that case, that's where you ultimately want to try to plan ahead as early as possible. Understanding to be able to get them into a senior housing apartment, lower income, that helps right off the bat. And knowing that you do need to plan for that ahead of time, because in most places that could be a 2 or a 5 year wait just to be able to get into a situation like that. And then understanding any assets that they may have, and how to best preserve their assets, and then to be able to be covered, because nothing will take any of us out quicker than a major medical crisis where everything's going along great. And then boom, no matter how much money we have, sometimes that could be. So so say say you have a 35-year-old adult child, and mom or dad is getting ready and they're thinking about retirement. Maybe they're in their 60s, mid 60s. Well, okay. Are you ready to retire? Could you delay it a little bit so you might get more in Social Security? And if you're still working, can you keep your medical benefits with them as long as possible before starting to take Medicare? And putting items, if you do have a few assets, putting them into a trust and being able to keep them there. So then you might still be able to qualify for care, say as Medicaid versus Medicare, because, understand that Medicare does not pay for assisted living, long-term care, memory care. It doesn't pay for any of that. That's all out of pocket. And if you have a plan and have spoken to an elder law lawyer ahead of time and get these items in place, you're better set if you need to go to a situation where you need to get onto Medicaid, because they have a look back period of 5 years. So if you kind of see it that it might be an issue in the future, get your assets taken care of, whatever they may be. I mean, even if we're talking, a life insurance policy or a small pension, you get it into a trust and safe that way. So if you do need assistance for your home or your medical, that's all put to the side and you can get that government assistance, because there is help out there. But you need somebody to support you through it, because they make it so difficult to do.
I'm nodding my head because I actually asked one of my professors that. I was helping a relative, and I think I said something like, "It's so complicated, I can't figure it out." And he said, even experts in the field like me can't figure it out. And he's been in gerontology for like 40 years. Yeah, it's so complicated. The US system is, you need like a concierge like Elizabeth. So
yes,
we're going to put your contact info in the show notes and social media. I don't know if you want people to reach out to you. I'll let you just say out loud in case anyone's listening and driving down the freeway, and you can check later, but tell us where we can find you, and that would be great.
Okay, well, I have my website, lifesencore.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Magallon-Fleury. You can also find me on Facebook, Elizabeth Magallon-Fleury. I also have a group page, and that's Aging in the 21st Century. Be prepared, not scared. And I'm on Instagram as well with Life's Encore Planning. Thank you so much for having me on today, Elise. I always enjoy our discussion when it comes to aging and just being able to support those out there, because that's what I'm here for, is to support, no matter what your older adult that you're who's struggling. I'm here to help. And I'm so glad that you also brought in possible lower income, because there is a lot out there. It's a lot to navigate, but we can help, and I can help with that as well.
Well,
Thank you.
Elise, again, another great guest. And you know what? That's how we can all super age, if we plan ahead.
Absolutely.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Have a great week,
day,
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.